After the encore, Rain hides Jimin's silent tears, until Jungkook finds him in the dark and whispers the words that change everything. In the rain after the encore, Jimin cried silently. Jungkook wiped away his tears and whispered, "You don't have to be strong alone. Why are you smiling out there if you're breaking in here?" The voice in Jimin's head felt louder than the roar of the stadium that had just chanted his name minutes earlier. The encore had ended in a storm. Rain poured over the open stadium lights, turning the stage into a glowing mirror of water and color. Fireworks had exploded above them like burning flowers, while thousands of fans screamed, cried, and sang their final chorus with trembling voices. From the outside, it had looked perfect. From the inside, Jimin felt like glass about to shatter. The moment the final bow ended and the members disappeared backstage, the noise of the crowd faded into a distant ocean. Staff hurried past with towels and equipment. Managers called schedules. Security guided people through corridors that smelled like wet metal, makeup powder, and stage smoke. Jimin slipped away. He didn't say anything. He didn't look back. His stage clothes were still damp with rain as he pushed open the heavy emergency door leading outside the stadium tunnel. The night air hit him like cold water. Rain fell harder here, drumming against the concrete ground. The world beyond the stadium was strangely quiet. Only the sound of rain. Only the dim yellow light of a flickering lamp above the exit. Jimin walked forward slowly until the cheers from inside were completely gone. Then he stopped. For a long moment, he stood there, breathing slowly, as if trying to remember how. Rain soaked through his hair and jacket. Water slid down his cheeks and chin, mixing with the faint glitter still clinging to his skin. Anyone looking from a distance might have thought he was just cooling down after the show. But his shoulders trembled. And then the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears slipping down his face while the rain hid them. Jimin lowered his head. He hated crying, especially after a concert, especially after giving everything on stage. Tonight had been another sold-out show, another ocean of light sticks, another night where thousands of people believed he was strong, radiant, unbreakable. But the truth lived somewhere else. The truth lived in the quiet, in the moments after the music stopped, in the heavy silence that followed applause. Jimin wiped his face quickly, frustrated with himself. Pathetic, he muttered under his breath. He had promised himself he wouldn't do this again. Not tonight. Not after everything they had worked for. But exhaustion had a strange way of loosening old wounds. His chest tightened as memories drifted in years of training, criticism, injuries, the constant pressure to stay perfect, to stay bright, to stay worthy of the stage. And lately, the fear had grown louder. What if one day the lights turned on and he couldn't shine anymore? What if the fans noticed the cracks? What if the people who depended on him saw how fragile he actually felt? Jimin exhaled slowly, staring at the rain hitting the pavement. "You're supposed to be stronger than this," he whispered. Behind him, the metal door creaked open. Footsteps followed. Jimin froze. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Only one person moved like that, quiet but unmistakable. Jungkook stepped outside, closing the door behind him. The rain instantly soaked his dark hair, but he didn't seem to care. For a moment, he said nothing. He simply looked at Jimin's back. Jimin still hadn't turned around. "You disappeared," Jungkook said softly. Jimin forced a small laugh that sounded thinner than he intended. "Just getting air." Jungkook walked closer. "You hate rain." Jimin shrugged slightly. "Maybe I changed my mind." The silence that followed was heavy. Jungkook stopped beside him. From this distance, The truth was impossible to hide. Jimin's red eyes, the tightness in his jaw, the way his hands were clenched. Jungkook's expression softened immediately. "You're crying." Jimin quickly looked away. "No." Rain slid down his face again. Jungkook reached out instinctively, his fingers brushing Jimin's cheek. The gesture was gentle, almost careful. His thumb wiped away a tear. Jimin inhaled sharply. "Don't," he said quietly. But Jungkook didn't pull his hand back. Instead, he studied Jimin's face with a seriousness that felt almost too honest. "You always do this," Jungkook murmured. "Do what?" "Pretend you're fine." Jimin's shoulders stiffened. "I am fine." Another tear slipped down despite the lie. Jungkook sighed softly. He had known Jimin for years, long enough to recognize the difference between Jimin the performer and Jimin the person. The performer sparkled. The person carried storms. "You gave everything on stage tonight," Jungkook said. "That's the job." "That's not what I mean." Jimin finally turned toward him. The stadium lights reflected faintly in Jungkook's eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Rain surrounded them like a curtain. Jimin looked tired in a way makeup couldn't hide. "You ever feel like," Jimin started quietly, then hesitated. "Like what?" "Like you're running out of strength, but everyone keeps asking you to fly higher." Jungkook didn't answer immediately. Because he understood. More than Jimin realized. "I used to think you never got scared," Jungkook admitted. Jimin blinked. "Why? You always smiled first." Jimin laughed softly, though his voice shook. "That's because someone had to." Jungkook shook his head. "No." He stepped closer. "You don't." The rain continued falling steadily around them. Jungkook lifted his hand again and gently wiped another tear from Jimin's cheek. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't have to be strong alone." The words landed softly, but they hit deeper than any applause. Jimin stared at him. Something inside his chest loosened slightly, like a knot beginning to unravel. For years he had carried the weight of expectations, fans, performances, perfection. But in that quiet moment under the rain, Jungkook's voice cut through all of it. Not as a bandmate, not as someone watching from the same stage, but as someone who had been standing beside him the entire time. Jimin let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The rain no longer felt cold. For the first time that night, the silence didn't feel empty. And somewhere beyond the stadium walls, the storm slowly began to calm. "Don't look at me like that." Jimin's voice cracked slightly as he stepped back, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the concrete. The distance between him and Jungkook was only a few steps, but it suddenly felt like a fragile line neither of them fully understood. Jungkook didn't move. "Like what?" he asked quietly. "Like you can see everything." "I can." The answer came too quickly. Jimin scoffed, shaking his head, though the gesture looked more defensive than amused. "No, you can't," he muttered. "Nobody can." Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, rolling across the dark sky above the stadium. Jungkook folded his arms slowly, his wet shirt clinging to his shoulders. The rain had softened into a steady fall, but the tension between them felt heavier than the storm. "You disappeared again tonight," Jungkook said. So you always do that when something's wrong." Jimin turned away, running a hand through his soaked hair. "I just needed a moment." "That's not what this is." Jimin spun around. "Then what is it, Jungkook?" His voice rose suddenly, sharp enough to cut through the quiet night. "Since you seem to know everything about me." Jungkook didn't flinch. What surprised Jimin most was the calm in his eyes. That's the problem, Jungkook said softly. You never tell anyone. Jimin laughed bitterly. And what exactly am I supposed to say? That you're struggling. I'm not struggling. You're crying in the rain outside a stadium after the biggest concert of the tour. Jimin froze. The words hung between them like exposed wires. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jimin's expression hardened. You think I'm weak? Jungkook's eyebrows lifted slightly. Is that really what you think I'm saying? Everyone does, eventually. The quiet confession slipped out before Jimin could stop it. His chest tightened immediately afterward. He hated when the truth escaped like that. Jungkook stepped closer again. Who told you that? No one has to, Jimin replied, his voice lower now. You can feel it. Feel what? The pressure. Jimin gestured vaguely toward the massive stadium walls behind them. To be perfect all the time. His voice trembled, but he kept talking. To sing perfectly, dance perfectly, smile perfectly, be the one who never cracks. Jungkook listened carefully. Jimin rarely talked like this. In fact, Jungkook realized he had almost never heard him say these things out loud. They expect you to be strong, Jimin continued quietly. Fans, company, everyone, even the members sometimes. That's not true. It is. Jimin's eyes flashed with frustration. You don't see it because you're. He stopped himself. Jungkook tilted his head slightly. Because I'm what? You're Jungkook. The name carried more weight than usual. You're the golden one, the one who can do everything. Jungkook blinked in surprise. Then he let out a short, humorless laugh. You think that makes it easier? Jimin frowned. Jungkook shook his head slowly. Do you know how many times I've been terrified before going on stage? Jimin didn't answer. How many nights I stayed awake thinking I'd mess up and disappoint everyone. Jimin's expression shifted slightly. I thought you never doubted yourself. Jungkook's voice grew quieter. I just learned how to hide it. Rain tapped against the metal door behind them. Jimin studied Jungkook's face carefully now, as if seeing something unfamiliar. You hide it better than I do, Jimin admitted. That's because you carry everyone else first. Jimin blinked. What? You always look after us, Jungkook said, even when you're exhausted. Jimin opened his mouth to argue, but couldn't find the words. Jungkook continued. You're the one who notices when someone's tired, the one who cheers people up, the one who stays late practicing until your feet bleed because you think it's not enough. Jimin looked down instinctively. The memory of blistered rehearsals flashed through his mind. You think no one notices, Jungkook said. But I do. The confession landed quietly. Jimin swallowed. The rain had slowed further now, turning into soft droplets drifting through the cold air. You shouldn't, Jimin murmured. Why not? Because it's not your responsibility. Jungkook stepped closer again. Now they were standing barely a foot apart. You're my responsibility. Jimin's head snapped up. That's not funny. I'm not joking. Jungkook's tone had changed. It wasn't teasing anymore. It was serious. Too serious. You're important to me, Jungkook continued. The words were simple, but something about the way he said them made Jimin's chest tighten again. Jungkook, I mean it. Jimin shook his head slowly, trying to deflect the intensity building between them. You're just emotional because of the concert. No. Jungkook's answer was firm. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Jimin felt a flicker of unease. What do you mean? Jungkook hesitated. For the first time that night, uncertainty crossed his face. You're not the only one who hides things. The quiet confession lingered in the cold air. Jimin frowned. What are you talking about? Jungkook looked at him carefully, as if weighing something dangerous. Then he asked softly, do you ever wonder why I always look for you first? Jimin blinked. What? After shows, during rehearsals, even in interviews. Jungkook's voice dropped. I always check where you are. Jimin felt heat rise unexpectedly to his face despite the rain. That's just because we're close. Jungkook didn't respond. The silence stretched. And suddenly, Jimin realized something unsettling. Jungkook wasn't smiling. You think it's just that? Jungkook asked quietly. Jimin's pulse quickened. I don't know what you're trying to say. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Neither do I, he admitted. Jimin stared at him. That answer was somehow more unsettling than a clear confession. Thunder rumbled again, far away. Inside the stadium, faint cheers echoed as staff finished clearing the stage. Reality was waiting just beyond the door. Managers, cameras, the world that expected them to be exactly who everyone believed they were. Jimin suddenly felt exhausted. This conversation is getting weird, he muttered. Jungkook chuckled softly. Maybe. Jimin rubbed the back of his neck. We should go back before someone notices we disappeared. Jungkook looked toward the stadium door, but didn't move. You're still crying. I'm not. Another tear betrayed him instantly. Jungkook reached out again and wiped it away. Jimin didn't protest this time. Instead, he closed his eyes briefly. You're impossible, Jimin murmured. Jungkook smiled faintly. You're stubborn. Someone has to be. They stood there quietly for a moment. The storm had almost passed. Clouds were breaking apart, revealing faint stars above the stadium lights. Jimin finally looked up again. You really think I don't have to carry everything alone? Jungkook met his gaze. I know you don't. Jimin studied his face carefully. For years they had stood on the same stage, shared the same dreams, survived the same chaos. But tonight felt different. Something unspoken had shifted between them. Something deeper. And strangely, Jimin felt a little lighter. Not healed. Not completely understood. But less alone. He let out a slow breath. All right, he said quietly. All right what? Jungkook asked. Jimin gave a small, tired smile. Maybe next time I won't disappear. Jungkook returned the smile. Good. They turned toward the stadium door together. The rain had finally stopped, but neither of them noticed the figure standing far down the dark service corridor inside the building. Watching, listening, and quietly recording everything. The metal door slammed shut behind them with a hollow echo that traveled through the service hallway like a warning. Jimin immediately sensed something had changed. The corridor lights flickered faintly overhead, casting long shadows along the concrete floor. The stadium noise was distant now, muffled behind thick walls. Somewhere far away a crew member laughed, but the sound felt strangely out of place in the heavy silence surrounding them. Jungkook noticed it too. He slowed his steps. You feel that? Jungkook muttered. Jimin glanced around. Feel what? Like someone's here. Jimin tried to brush it off. This place is full of staff. No, Jungkook said quietly, I mean someone watching. Jimin gave him a skeptical look. You've been watching too many thrillers. But Jungkook wasn't smiling. His eyes moved carefully down the corridor. Then he suddenly turned around. The hallway behind them was empty. Still, silent. Jimin exhaled. See? Jungkook frowned slightly. Maybe. They continued walking toward the dressing room area. The closer they got, the louder the activity became. Managers were discussing schedules. Stylists were packing makeup kits. Equipment cases rolled across the floor with metallic clatters. Normal chaos. Comforting chaos. Jimin finally relaxed a little. See, no spies hiding in the shadows, he said lightly. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. He still felt uneasy. But he followed Jimin into the dressing room anyway. The room was half empty now. Most of the members had already changed and left for the vans waiting outside. Taehyung sat on a couch, scrolling his phone lazily. Namjoon stood near the mirror removing stage makeup while reading messages on a tablet. Both looked up as Jimin and Jungkook entered. Taehyung smirked. Well, look who finally came back from their dramatic rain scene. Jimin froze. What? Taehyung raised an eyebrow. You two vanished after the encore. Staff thought you got kidnapped. Namjoon glanced over his shoulder calmly. Everything all right? Jimin shrugged quickly. Just needed air. Taehyung tilted his head, studying Jimin's face. You look like you cried. Jimin stiffened. I did not. Taehyung grinned. Relax, I'm not judging. Jungkook grabbed a towel from the table and tossed it over Jimin's head. You're soaked. Jimin pulled it down, annoyed. Thanks. Taehyung's smirk widened as he observed the interaction. You two are weird tonight. Jungkook sat down in a chair, stretching his arms behind his head. You're always weird. Taehyung laughed. Namjoon finally turned toward them fully. The managers want us ready in 10 minutes, he said. Media interviews tomorrow morning. Jimin groaned. Already? Namjoon nodded. To a life. Jimin collapsed into a chair, exhaustion washing over him again. Jungkook glanced sideways at him. You okay? Jimin rolled his eyes. Yes, Mom. Taehyung burst out laughing. Wow. Namjoon raised an eyebrow. Did I miss something? Nothing, Jimin said quickly. But Jungkook couldn't stop the small smile creeping onto his face. And that was when Taehyung noticed something else. His grin slowly faded. He leaned forward slightly. Wait. Jimin frowned. What? Taehyung pointed toward Jungkook. Why are you looking at him like that? Jungkook blinked. Like what? Like he's the only person in the room. The words landed harder than Taehyung expected. Jimin's ears turned red instantly. That's ridiculous. Taehyung didn't look convinced. Namjoon watched the interaction quietly now, sensing tension. You two had a fight, he asked calmly. No, Jungkook replied. Yes, Jimin said at the same time. Both froze. Taehyung clapped slowly. Oh, this is interesting. Jimin groaned. We didn't fight. Jungkook leaned forward. We talked. That's worse, Taehyung said dramatically. Namjoon crossed his arms. What about? Jimin and Jungkook exchanged a quick glance. Neither answered. Taehyung whistled. Wow, secrets. Namjoon's tone remained calm but curious. If something bothering either of you, you should talk to the group. Jimin shifted uncomfortably. It's nothing like that. Jungkook spoke before he could stop himself. He's overwhelmed. The room fell silent. Jimin stared at him. Jungkook. What? You didn't have to announce it. Namjoon's expression softened. Is that true? Jimin looked away. I'm just tired. Taehyung leaned back again, studying him carefully. You've been pushing yourself too hard. Jimin shrugged. I'm fine. Jungkook sighed. You said that earlier too. Jimin shot him a warning look. Stop. Jungkook didn't back down. You were crying in the rain. The words dropped like a bomb. Taehyung's eyes widened. Namjoon's brows furrowed. Jimin's face flushed deep red. Why would you say that? Because it's true. Not here. Jimin stood up suddenly. His chair scraped loudly across the floor. The room filled with tension. Taehyung looked between them, stunned. Wait, seriously. Namjoon spoke gently. Jimin. But Jimin shook his head. I don't need a group therapy session. Jungkook stood too. This isn't about embarrassment. Yes, it is. Jimin's voice cracked. You don't get it. Then explain it. Because I'm supposed to be strong. The room went completely quiet. Even the noise from the hallway seemed to fade. Jimin's breathing was uneven now. I'm supposed to hold everything together, he said quietly. That's what everyone expects. Namjoon spoke softly. We expect you to be human. Jimin laughed bitterly. That's not how this industry works. Taehyung frowned. You think fans would hate you for struggling? No, Jimin admitted, but they'd worry. Jungkook stepped closer. They already care. That's exactly the problem. Jimin ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I don't want to be someone they have to worry about. Jungkook's voice dropped. You're not a machine. Jimin's eyes flashed. And you're not my therapist. The words came out sharper than he intended. Jungkook froze. For a moment, hurt flickered across his face. Jimin immediately regretted it. I didn't mean. But Jungkook cut him off. No. His voice was suddenly colder. You meant it. Jimin swallowed. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Jimin struggled to answer. Because the truth was messy. Because part of him was afraid of how much Jungkook cared. Because another part of him didn't know how to handle the intensity between them. Jimin began quietly. But before he could finish, Taehyung's phone suddenly buzzed loudly. Taehyung glanced down. His expression changed instantly. What? Namjoon asked. Taehyung slowly turned the phone toward them. The screen showed a video. Jimin's stomach dropped. It was footage from the service corridor outside the stadium. Rain falling. Two figures standing close together. Jimin crying. Jungkook wiping his tears. And the moment Jungkook whispered something. Taehyung looked horrified. Why is this online already? Jimin felt the world tilt. What do you mean online? Taehyung scrolled. It's spreading on social media right now. Namjoon stepped closer. Let me see. The caption under the video read. Idols caught in emotional moment after concert. What's really going on between them? Jimin's heart started pounding. How did someone get this? Jungkook's jaw tightened. His earlier unease came rushing back. The hallway. Namjoon looked at them sharply. You think someone recorded you? Jungkook nodded slowly. I told you it felt like someone was watching. Jimin stared at the screen. The video kept looping. His tears. Jungkook's hand on his face. The closeness between them. The vulnerability. Everything he had tried to hide from the world. Now exposed. Taehyung whispered, "This is going to explode." Namjoon was already grabbing his phone to call management. But Jimin barely heard anything. Because one terrifying thought echoed in his mind. The world was about to see everything. And nothing would ever be simple again. The room felt smaller with every second the video kept playing. Jimin stared at Taehyung's phone like it was a ticking bomb. The clip looped again. Rain falling in silver streaks. His shoulders shaking. Jungkook stepping closer. The moment Jungkook's hand touched his face. The moment his tears were wiped away. The moment Jungkook leaned close enough to whisper. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. "Turn it off," he said quietly. Taehyung immediately locked the screen. But the damage had already settled in the air. Namjoon was packing now, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and controlled. "Yes, now it's spreading fast," he said to the management team. "You need to handle this immediately." Jungkook hadn't moved. His eyes were still fixed on the blank phone screen, as if the video was still playing in his mind. Jimin felt anger rising beneath the panic. How the hell did this happen? Taehyung rubbed the back of his neck. Probably some staff member hiding with a phone. Or a security camera leak, Namjoon added quietly after hanging up. Jimin ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "This is insane." Jungkook finally spoke. "It's my fault." Everyone looked at him. Jimin frowned. "What? I shouldn't have followed you outside." "That's not the point," Jimin said quickly. "It is," Jungkook insisted. "If I hadn't gone out there." "You would have let me stand alone in the rain crying," Jimin snapped. The tension returned instantly. Taehyung glanced between them like someone watching a fire spread through dry grass. "Guys!" But neither of them heard him. "You don't understand how bad this looks," Jimin continued. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "So you're embarrassed?" "That's not what I said." "That's exactly what you said." Jimin stepped forward. "You think this is funny? This could turn into a scandal." "Why?" "Because people will twist it." Jungkook crossed his arms. "And what exactly are they twisting?" The question hung heavy. Jimin hesitated. Taehyung looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch. Namjoon watched them both carefully. Jimin finally answered quietly. "They'll think something is going on between us." Jungkook raised an eyebrow. "And that's bad." Jimin blinked. "You can't be serious." Jungkook shrugged slightly. "I'm asking." Jimin's voice rose. "Yes, it's bad." "Why?" "Because we're idols. So everything we do gets analyzed." Jungkook stepped closer. And people will make rumors." Jungkook's eyes locked onto his. "They already do." Jimin clenched his fists. "This is different." "Is it?" "Yes." Jungkook's voice suddenly sharpened. "Why are you so afraid of it?" Jimin froze. The question cut deeper than expected. "I'm not afraid," he said. Jungkook gave him a look that clearly said he didn't believe it. Taehyung finally stood up. "Okay, this is getting intense." Namjoon remained calm but firm. "Both of you need to breathe." But Jimin couldn't stop now. "You don't get it," he said to Jungkook. "One wrong rumor can destroy careers." Jungkook scoffed. You think fans would abandon us because I comforted you. That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? Jimin struggled to explain the chaos spinning in his head. You know how the industry works, he said. People will say things. Let them. It's not that simple. Jungkook's voice lowered but grew heavier. Why? Jimin hesitated again. Because the truth was dangerous. Because they'll say we're. He stopped. Jungkook finished it calmly. Together. Silence crashed into the room. Taehyung looked like someone had just dropped a grenade at his feet. Namjoon remained still, though his eyes sharpened slightly. Jimin's face flushed. That's exactly the rumor that will start. Jungkook held his gaze. And if it does? Jimin stared at him like he'd gone insane. You can't be this careless. I'm not careless. Then why are you acting like this isn't serious? Jungkook's voice softened. Because I don't think caring about you is something to hide. The room went quiet again. Jimin felt his heartbeat pounding in his ears. You're saying dangerous things right now. Jungkook shrugged lightly. I'm saying honest things. Taehyung whispered under his breath. Holy hell. Namjoon spoke carefully. Jungkook. But Jungkook didn't look away from Jimin. Why are you really panicking? Jungkook asked quietly. Jimin didn't answer. Is it the rumor? Yes. Or is it the possibility people might believe it? Jimin's throat tightened. You're twisting my words. No. Jungkook's voice dropped. I'm asking if the idea bothers you because it's untrue, or because it's too close to the truth. The room froze. Taehyung nearly choked on air. Namjoon's gaze flicked between them. Jimin looked stunned. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Jungkook, he finally said quietly, stop. But Jungkook continued. Why does it scare you so much? Because it would ruin everything. Or because you're scared of what it means. Jimin's emotions exploded. Because I don't know what you want from me. The confession came out raw and louder than he intended. Everyone fell silent again. Jungkook blinked. Jimin breathed heavily, realizing what he had just revealed. You keep saying these things, Jimin continued, voice shaking, looking at me like that, acting like. Like what? Like I'm more than just a member. Jungkook didn't answer. The silence between them stretched painfully. Finally, Jimin whispered. Are you? Jungkook's expression changed. All the teasing, frustration, and defensiveness faded. What remained was something far more vulnerable. I don't know, he admitted quietly. The honesty stunned everyone. I just know that when you disappeared tonight, Jungkook continued, my chest felt like something was wrong. Jimin couldn't move. I just know that seeing you cry hurt more than performing in front of 50,000 people, Jungkook said. Taehyung looked at the floor awkwardly. Namjoon rubbed his temples. Jimin whispered. Jungkook. And I know that when people see that video, Jungkook finished softly, I don't regret being there. Jimin's chest ached. Even if it becomes a scandal. Yes. Even if people attack us. Yes. Even if the company forces us to apologize. Jungkook didn't hesitate. Yes. Jimin stared at him like he was both amazed and terrified. You're insane. Jungkook smiled faintly. Maybe. Namjoon suddenly cleared his throat. All of this might be premature. Everyone looked at him. He held up his phone. The company just released a statement. Jimin's heart jumped. What does it say? Namjoon read quietly. They're calling the video a moment of emotional support between bandmates after an exhausting concert. Taehyung exhaled. That's actually not bad. But Namjoon kept reading. And they're investigating who recorded and leaked the footage. Jungkook frowned. So the person who filmed us is still out there. Namjoon nodded. And if they have more footage? The implication lingered dangerously. Jimin felt cold again. Because suddenly he remembered something. The moment in the rain. The way Jungkook had leaned close. The whisper that hadn't been heard in the video. His eyes widened slightly. Jungkook noticed. What? Jimin swallowed. The recording didn't catch what you said. Jungkook blinked. What do you mean? The whisper. Jimin looked at him carefully. They couldn't hear it. Jungkook's expression softened again. Good. Jimin felt his heart skip. Why? Jungkook's voice was quiet. Because that part was only for you. Jimin's breath caught. And for the first time since seeing the video, his fear tangled with something even more complicated. Something he wasn't ready to name. The room fell into an uneasy silence after Jungkook's words. Because that part was only for you. The sentence lingered in the air like a spark waiting to ignite something dangerous. Jimin felt his heartbeat stutter in his chest. He looked away first, pretending to focus on the floor, but the tension wrapped around him like a tightening thread. Taehyung broke the silence with an awkward cough. Okay, he muttered, this atmosphere is intense. Namjoon exhaled slowly, still holding his phone. The company is sending the vans now, he said. They want everyone back at the hotel immediately. Jimin nodded too quickly. Good. Anything to escape this moment. But Jungkook didn't look ready to move on. He was still watching Jimin. Still waiting. Jimin avoided his gaze. Let's just go, he said. They gathered their things quickly. The dressing room buzz that usually followed concerts had faded. Most of the staff had already left, and the hallways were quieter now, echoing with distant footsteps and rolling equipment cases. Taehyung walked ahead, scrolling nervously through social media again. Guys, he murmured, his voice uneasy. The video has like millions of views already. Jimin's stomach twisted. Don't read the comments. Too late. Taehyung winced. Some people think it's sweet. Jimin didn't respond. And some people, Taehyung added carefully, are already making theories. Jimin stopped walking. What kind of theories? Taehyung hesitated. About you too. Jimin's chest tightened again. Namjoon stepped in calmly. Social media speculation is inevitable. The best thing we can do right now is stay quiet and let management handle it. Jungkook's voice was low. Or we could ignore it. Namjoon gave him a measured look. That's not how this works. Jungkook didn't argue further, but his jaw tightened. They reached the underground parking area where several black vans waited under bright white lights. Security staff stood nearby, watching carefully as the members approached. Managers rushed over immediately. One of them looked exhausted already. You've all seen the video, the manager asked. Namjoon nodded. We have. The manager sighed heavily. It's trending worldwide. Jimin felt dizzy. Worldwide. Yes. Taehyung whispered under his breath. Great. The manager continued. The company statement is trying to calm things down, but reporters are already asking questions. Jimin rubbed his forehead. Of course they are. The manager looked directly at Jungkook and Jimin. Until things settle, We need both of you to avoid being alone together in public. The words hit harder than expected. Jimin's heart dropped slightly. Jungkook frowned immediately. That's ridiculous. It's precaution, the manager insisted. So we're being separated because someone filmed us comforting each other? Jungkook asked sharply. It's not about that, the manager said carefully. It's exactly about that, Jungkook replied. Namjoon stepped forward gently. Jungkook. But Jungkook wasn't finished. You're treating it like a scandal. The manager lowered his voice. We are treating it like something the media will turn into a scandal. Jimin suddenly felt exhausted again. Can we just go to the hotel? He asked quietly. The manager nodded. Yes, everyone get in. They climbed into the vans, the doors sliding shut with a heavy thud. The ride was unusually quiet. Streetlights passed outside like streaks of gold across the windows. Rain had finally stopped, leaving the city glowing under wet asphalt and neon reflections. Jimin sat in the middle row, staring out the window. Jungkook sat across from him. Neither spoke for several minutes. Taehyung had earbuds in, but wasn't playing anything. Namjoon was texting constantly. Finally, Jungkook broke the silence. You're still upset. Jimin didn't turn around. No. You're lying. I'm tired. That's not the same thing. Jimin sighed quietly. Can we not do this here? Do what? This. Jungkook leaned forward slightly. Talk. Yes. Why? Jimin finally turned to face him. Because everyone's watching. Taehyung immediately looked up. I'm not watching, he said quickly. Namjoon didn't even glance up from his phone. I am definitely watching, he said calmly. Jimin groaned. This is exactly what I mean. Jungkook leaned back in his seat. You're acting like we committed a crime. Jimin lowered his voice. You don't understand how complicated this could get. Jungkook studied him carefully. Or maybe you're overthinking it. Jimin's patience snapped slightly. You think I want the internet debating whether we're secretly dating? The van went silent. Taehyung slowly removed one earbud. Namjoon finally looked up. Jungkook didn't blink. Well, he said evenly, are we? Jimin's brain short-circuited. What? You keep saying it like it's impossible. Jimin stared at him. It is impossible. Why? Because we're members of the same group. So it would destroy everything. Jungkook tilted his head. Would it? Yes. Jungkook's voice softened. Or are you afraid of something else? Jimin felt his chest tighten again. Stop asking that. Then answer it. Jimin shook his head. This conversation is insane. Jungkook leaned forward again. You never answered me earlier. Answered what? Why the idea scares you so much? Jimin's voice dropped. Because I don't want to lose what we have. The honesty surprised even him. Jungkook blinked. You think that would make us lose it? I think it could destroy it. Jungkook looked out the window briefly. Then he said quietly, I think pretending things don't exist destroys more. Jimin felt that sentence like a punch. Before he could reply, Taehyung suddenly spoke again. Guys. His voice sounded different now. Concerned. They all looked at him. Taehyung slowly turned his phone around. There's another video. Jimin felt ice run through his veins. What? Taehyung swallowed. It's from a different angle. Namjoon took the phone. His expression darkened. Where was this recorded? Taehyung whispered. Closer. Jimin stood up slightly in his seat. Let me see. Namjoon hesitated before showing him. The footage was clearer. Closer. Someone had been standing much nearer in the corridor. The rain. Jimin crying. Jungkook stepping forward. The moment his hand touched Jimin's face. The moment they stood inches apart. And then, Jungkook leaning down. Close enough that from this angle, it almost looked like they were about to kiss. The van went completely silent. Jimin's face drained of color. This is bad, Taehyung whispered. Namjoon nodded slowly. The caption under the video was already spreading across thousands of posts. Idol duo caught in intimate moment backstage. Jimin felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Jungkook's voice broke the silence. Calm. Steady. Let them talk. Everyone turned toward him. Jungkook looked directly at Jimin. His eyes were serious but strangely peaceful. I'm not ashamed of caring about you. Jimin's heart pounded painfully in his chest. Because in that moment, he realized something terrifying. The scandal was what scared him most anymore. It was how much Jungkook meant every word. The van slowed as it turned into the underground entrance of the hotel, tires hissing against the wet pavement. Bright security lights flashed across the windows, briefly illuminating the tense faces inside before the darkness returned. No one spoke. Jimin's pulse still hammered in his chest. The second video kept replaying in his mind. The angle. The closeness. The moment where it looked like Jungkook might have leaned in too far. Too close. Too intimate. He rubbed his temples, trying to clear his thoughts, but the silence in the van made everything louder. Finally, the vehicle stopped. A security guard opened the door. Quickly, one of the managers said, reporters might already be outside. They stepped out into the private garage, the echo of footsteps bouncing off concrete walls. Another elevator waited at the far end, guarded by two staff members. Taehyung leaned closer to Jimin as they walked. You okay? Jimin exhaled slowly. No. Taehyung nodded sympathetically. Yeah, same. Namjoon remained calm but serious as always. We'll get through this. Jungkook walked a few steps behind Jimin. Close enough to reach him. Far enough to respect the space the manager had demanded earlier. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. They stepped inside. The mirrored walls reflected all of them from every angle, making the confined space feel even tighter. The elevator began rising. Floor numbers blinked slowly. 13, 14, 15. Jimin kept his eyes on the glowing numbers. He didn't want to look at Jungkook. Not because he was angry. Because he wasn't sure what he would feel if he did. The elevator reached their floor and opened. Their manager stepped out first. Everyone go straight to your rooms, no wandering. Taehyung whispered under his breath. Feels like we're under house arrest. Namjoon gave him a look. Just follow the plan. They walked down the quiet hotel hallway. The carpet muffled their footsteps, and the soft lighting created a strange calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos spreading across the internet. Jimin stopped in front of his room. His keycard hovered in front of the lock. For a moment, he didn't swipe it. He could feel Jungkook standing a few feet behind him. Waiting. Finally, Jimin opened the door. He stepped inside. But before he could close it, Jimin. Jungkook's voice stopped him. Jimin turned slowly. The hallway was empty except for them. Taehyung and Namjoon had already disappeared into their own rooms. The manager had gone down the halls. Only silence remained. "What?" Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook hesitated. "Can we talk?" Jimin looked tired. "We've been talking all night." "Not really." Jimin leaned against the doorframe. "What else is there to say?" Jungkook stepped closer. The distance between them shrank again. "This situation, it's not your fault." Jimin laughed softly. "It kind of is. You didn't like the video." "No, but I cried on camera like an idiot." "You cried because you're human." Jimin shook his head. "You make it sound simple. Isn't it?" "No." Jimin's voice dropped. "Because now everything is complicated." Jungkook studied him carefully. "Because of the rumors. Because of you." The words slipped out before Jimin could stop them. Jungkook blinked. "Me?" "Yes." Jimin ran a hand through his hair again, packing slightly inside the doorway. "You say things like you did in the van, like none of this matters." "It doesn't." "It does to me." Jungkook stepped forward. "Why?" Jimin looked at him, frustration burning in his eyes. "Because I care about you." The confession burst out. The hallway went silent again. Jungkook didn't move. Jimin froze, realizing what he had just said. "I mean, as a member," Jimin added quickly. But the correction sounded weak, even to him. Jungkook tilted his head slightly. "Just as a member." Jimin hesitated. His chest tightened. "Yes." Jungkook's gaze softened, but there was something sad behind it. "Okay." The simple response surprised Jimin. "You don't believe me." Jungkook shrugged faintly. "I believe that's what you want to believe." Jimin frowned. "What does that mean?" Jungkook looked down briefly before meeting his eyes again. "It means you're scared." "I'm not scared." "You are." "Of what?" Jungkook's voice dropped. "Of what might happen if you stop pretending this is only friendship." The words hit like thunder. Jimin stared at him. "You're making assumptions." "Am I?" "Yes." "Then tell me I'm wrong." Jimin opened his mouth. But no words came. The silence stretched. Jungkook took another step closer. Now they were standing only inches apart again. "You said earlier you didn't want to lose what we have," Jungkook said quietly. Jimin swallowed. "Yes." "What if we wouldn't lose it?" "What if we would?" Jungkook searched his face. "What if we could have something more?" Jimin's heart pounded violently. "You're talking crazy." "Maybe." Jungkook's voice softened even more. "But it's honest." Jimin felt dizzy. "You're risking everything by saying this." Jungkook smiled faintly. "I've already risked it." "Why?" "Because you matter more to me than rumors." Jimin's chest ached. For a moment, he imagined what it would be like if the world didn't exist. If there were no cameras, no expectations, no careers balancing on fragile public image. Just two people standing in a quiet hallway. Just honesty. But reality slammed back quickly. "This can't happen," Jimin whispered. Jungkook nodded slowly. "Because of the group." "Yes." "Because of the company." "Yes." Jungkook studied him carefully. "And because of your heart." Jimin looked away. "That's not the point." Jungkook sighed softly. "You never answer that part." Before Jimin could respond, Footsteps echoed from the far end of the hallway. Their manager appeared again, walking toward them quickly. "Why are you two still out here?" Jimin stepped back immediately. "Just going to sleep." The manager's eyes moved between them suspiciously. "Good." Then he added firmly, "And remember what I said, no private meetings for a while." Jungkook's expression hardened slightly, but he didn't argue. "Good night," he said quietly to Jimin. Then he turned and walked toward his own room. Jimin watched him go. The hallway felt colder after he left. Jimin finally stepped inside his room and closed the door. The silence inside felt overwhelming. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dark window. Outside, the city lights shimmered across the wet streets. His phone buzzed endlessly with notifications. Messages, news alerts, social media chaos. But he didn't check them, because the loudest noise was inside his head. Jungkook's voice. "What if we could have something more?" Jimin pressed his hands over his face. He had spent years being strong for everyone. Strong for the fans. Strong for the group. Strong for the world watching. But tonight something had cracked open. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he had the strength to close it again. Outside his door, footsteps passed down the hallway. And somewhere behind another door on the same floor, Jungkook lay awake too, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the truth they were both avoiding had already begun to change everything. Jimin didn't sleep. The city outside the hotel window slowly shifted from midnight blue to the pale gray of early morning, but his mind refused to quiet down. Every time he closed his eyes, the same moments replayed like fragments of a dream he couldn't escape. The rain in the corridor. Jungkook's hand on his face. The closeness. The whisper meant only for him. And then the words in the hallway outside his room. "What if we could have something more?" Jimin sat up in bed with a frustrated sigh and ran both hands through his hair. His phone lay on the nightstand, vibrating again with another wave of notifications. He had ignored them all night. But eventually, curiosity defeated him. He reached for the phone. The screen lit up instantly. Thousands of messages, news alerts, social media tags. Jimin opened one trending post. His stomach dropped. Clips from the second video had already been slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed frame by frame. People were arguing in endless threads about what they thought they saw. Some comments called it a beautiful moment between friends. Others were far more speculative. The phrases appearing again and again made his chest tighten. Secret relationship. Hidden love. Idol scandal. Jimin locked the phone quickly and tossed it back onto the bed. His head throbbed. He stood up and walked to the window, pressing his palm against the cool glass. The world outside continued normally. Cars moving. People walking. Morning beginning like any other day. Yet inside the hotel, everything felt fragile. His thoughts drifted back to Jungkook. He tried to convince himself the conversation last night had been emotional chaos. Stress. Exhaustion. Nothing more. But Jungkook's eyes, when he said those things, had not looked confused. They had looked certain. Jimin closed his eyes. He didn't know what scared him more. The rumors online, or the possibility that Jungkook meant every word. A sudden knock at the door startled him. 3 firm knocks. "Jimin." Namjoon's voice. Jimin opened the door. Namjoon stood there holding a tablet, his usual calm expression slightly more serious than usual. "You should come to the meeting room," he said. Jimin frowned. Already. Namjoon nodded. The company wants to talk to all of us. Jimin exhaled slowly. Of course they do. They walked down the hallway together. The quiet hotel floor had transformed overnight into something tense. Security guards stood at corners. Staff members whispered to each other. When they reached the meeting room, the others were already there. Taehyung sat on the couch, legs bouncing nervously. Jungkook leaned against the wall near the window. Jimin's heart gave a small, involuntary jolt when their eyes met. Neither spoke. Their manager stood at the center of the room, looking exhausted but determined. "Thank you for coming quickly," he began. Jimin sat beside Taehyung. "What's the damage?" Taehyung asked quietly. The manager sighed. "The second video is spreading faster than the first." Namjoon folded his arms. "We expected that." The manager nodded. "But there's something else." He placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. Another video appeared. But this one wasn't from the hallway. It was from a backstage corridor camera inside the stadium. The footage showed Jimin leaving the dressing room earlier that night. Then Jungkook following a minute later. Taehyung whispered under his breath, "Oh no." The manager paused the video. The person leaking these clips clearly has access to multiple cameras or was moving around the building. Namjoon frowned. "So this isn't just a random fan?" "No," the manager replied. "It's someone inside." The room grew colder. Jimin felt anger rising. "Someone is deliberately leaking footage of us." "Yes," the manager said. Taehyung shook his head in disbelief. "That's insane." The manager continued. "We are investigating, but until we know who it is, everything you do could potentially be recorded." Jungkook spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "So what do you want us to do?" "Be careful," the manager replied, "especially you two." He looked directly at Jimin and Jungkook. "No private conversations, no moments alone, no situations that could be misinterpreted." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "That's impossible." "It's necessary." Jimin rubbed his forehead again. "How long?" "Until this dies down." Jungkook pushed himself away from the wall. "And if it does?" The manager hesitated. "Then we'll manage the situation differently." Jimin could hear the unspoken meaning. Damage control. Public statements. Apologies. The thought made his stomach twist. The meeting ended soon after, but the tension remained. As the others left the room one by one, Jungkook lingered near the window. Jimin tried to leave too. But Jungkook's voice stopped him again. "Jimin." Jimin paused. Namjoon glanced between them, then quietly guided Taehyung out of the room. The door closed. Silence filled the space again. Jimin crossed his arms. "You heard the manager." Jungkook stepped closer. "I heard him." "Then we shouldn't be talking." "Too late." Jimin sighed. "You're making this harder." "Harder than pretending nothing is happening." "Yes." Jungkook studied him carefully. "You didn't answer my question last night." Jimin groaned softly. "You're still thinking about that?" "Yes." Jimin looked at the floor. "Jungkook, just tell me the truth." Jimin hesitated. Because the truth felt like stepping off a cliff. "What if I said I don't know?" he finally said. Jungkook didn't look surprised. "That's more honest than saying it's impossible." Jimin looked up. "You're not giving up, are you?" Jungkook shook his head slowly. "No." Jimin laughed weakly. "You're unbelievably stubborn." And you're unbelievably scared. Jimin rolled his eyes. Maybe I am. Jungkook's expression softened. That's okay. Jimin blinked. What? You don't have to figure everything out today. Jimin studied his face. You're strangely calm about this. Jungkook shrugged slightly. Because I know one thing for sure. What? Jungkook stepped closer again. That video didn't create something between us. Jimin felt his heartbeat quicken. It just revealed what was already there. Jimin didn't answer. But this time, he didn't deny it either. The morning sunlight streamed through the window behind them, casting long shadows across the room. For the first time since the chaos began, the silence between them didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a fragile understanding. And somewhere beyond the hotel walls, the world continued arguing about a story it barely understood. The quiet understanding in the meeting room didn't last long. By afternoon, the world had exploded. Jimin sat on the couch in his hotel room staring at the television while the news channels replayed the same clips over and over again. The footage from the corridor appeared on every entertainment broadcast, slowed down and zoomed in like evidence in a courtroom. Rain falling, his face trembling, Jungkook's hand on his cheek. The moment they stood so close, it looked like the air between them might break. A bold headline flashed across the screen. Global idol duo sparks relationship rumors. Jimin muted the TV. The silence that followed was worse. His phone buzzed again on the table. Messages from friends, messages from staff, messages from people he hadn't spoken to in months, suddenly asking if he was okay. He leaned back and covered his face with his hands. Great, he muttered, just great. Another knock came at the door. Before he could answer, Taehyung pushed it open and stepped inside. You saw the news. Jimin gestured toward the muted TV. I noticed. Taehyung walked in and collapsed into the chair across from him. This is insane. Jimin nodded slowly. Yeah. Taehyung glanced at him carefully. You holding up? Jimin shrugged. I've had worse days. Taehyung leaned forward. You want honesty? Always. Taehyung hesitated. I don't think this is just about the video anymore. Jimin frowned. What do you mean? The internet is digging into everything now, Taehyung said. Old interviews, old interactions, every time you two ever stood next to each other. Jimin sighed heavily. Of course they are. Taehyung rubbed the back of his neck. And honestly, some of it looks suspicious. Jimin stared at him. Suspicious. Taehyung raised his hands quickly. I'm not accusing you of anything. Jimin laughed bitterly. Everyone else already is. Taehyung shook his head. That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? Taehyung looked him straight in the eye. I mean, maybe people are noticing something that was already there. Jimin felt his chest tighten. You too. Taehyung sighed. I'm your friend. I've been watching you guys for years. Jimin didn't respond. Taehyung leaned back in the chair. Do you want the truth? Apparently, everyone does today. Taehyung spoke quietly. You two have always been different. Jimin looked away. Different how? Taehyung shrugged. Closer, more intense. Jimin rubbed his forehead again. You're imagining things. Taehyung tilted his head. Am I? Before Jimin could answer, the door burst open again. Namjoon stepped in quickly. His expression was serious. We have a problem. Taehyung sat up. What now? Namjoon held up his phone. The third video just dropped. Jimin felt a cold wave wash through him. Third. Namjoon nodded. This one is worse. Jimin stood immediately. Show me. Namjoon hesitated before playing it. The footage appeared on the screen. This time it wasn't from the corridor. It was from outside. The parking area behind the stadium. The angle was grainy but clear enough. It showed Jungkook and Jimin standing in the rain. The moment Jungkook wiped his tears. The moment Jimin looked up at him. But this clip continued longer than the others. Long enough to show the seconds after the whisper. Jimin's breath caught. Because the camera had captured something he hadn't even realized at the time. After Jungkook whispered to him, Jimin had grabbed his sleeve. Just for a second. Just long enough to stop him from stepping away. Taehyung whispered under his breath. Oh wow. The clip froze on that frame. Jimin holding Jungkook's arm. Their faces inches apart. The moment looked painfully intimate. Jimin felt his pulse racing again. They're going to destroy us. Namjoon exhaled slowly. The company is already preparing another statement. Taehyung looked at Jimin carefully. Did you mean to do that? Jimin blinked. What? Grab him like that? Jimin shook his head quickly. I don't even remember doing it. Namjoon spoke calmly. Instinct. Jimin sank back onto the couch. Great, my instincts just caused an international scandal. Taehyung leaned forward. Or revealed something real. Jimin glared at him. Not helping. Taehyung raised his hands. Just saying. Namjoon's phone buzzed again. He read the message and sighed. The company wants Jungkook and Jimin downstairs immediately. Jimin closed his eyes briefly. Of course they do. The three of them walked down to the private conference room on the first floor. Security stood outside the door. Inside, several company executives waited around the table. Jungkook was already there. He stood near the window, arms crossed. When Jimin entered, his eyes flicked up immediately. The tension in the room was thick. One of the executives spoke first. You've both seen the new footage. Jimin nodded quietly. Yes. The executive leaned forward. This situation is escalating faster than expected. Jungkook remained calm. So what's the plan? The executive exchanged a glance with the others. We need to stop the speculation. Jimin already sensed where this was going. How? The executive looked directly at them. You two will do a joint interview. Jimin's eyes widened. An interview? Yes. Jungkook frowned slightly. And say what? That you're close friends who supported each other during a stressful moment. Jimin swallowed. And if they ask about the rumors? The executive answered bluntly. You deny them. Silence filled the room. Jimin felt every eye watching them. Jungkook finally spoke. What if we don't want to deny them? The room froze. One executive looked shocked. Excuse me. Jungkook's voice remained calm but firm. What if we don't want to lie? Jimin's heart started pounding violently. Jungkook. But Jungkook didn't stop. You're asking us to act like caring about each other is something shameful. That's not what we're saying, the executive replied sharply. It's exactly what you're saying, Jungkook said. Jimin stepped closer quickly. Stop. But Jungkook's eyes were still locked on the executives. You want to control the story. Yes, the executive replied bluntly, that's our job. And what if the story is that simple? The room fell silent again. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's arm. Enough. Jungkook looked at him. Jimin's voice was barely above a whisper. Please. Something in his tone made Jungkook stop. The tension hung heavily in the air. Finally, one executive cleared his throat. The interview is tomorrow morning. Jimin nodded weakly. Okay. The meeting ended soon after. As everyone began leaving the room, Jungkook lingered again. Jimin stayed behind too. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jimin turned toward him. What were you doing in there? Jungkook shrugged. Being honest. Jimin ran a hand through his hair. This isn't just about honesty anymore. Jungkook studied him quietly. Are you saying you want to lie? Jimin's voice cracked slightly. I'm saying I don't want to lose everything. Jungkook stepped closer. And if telling the truth costs us something? Jimin whispered. It could cost us everything. Jungkook looked at him for a long moment. Then he said softly, maybe some things are worth that risk. Jimin didn't answer. Because deep down, part of him was beginning to wonder if Jungkook was right. The rain had not stopped since that night, as if the sky itself refused to forget what had happened backstage. By the time dawn crept over the quiet city, the world outside their hotel looked washed out and fragile, the streets shining like mirrors under the pale grey light. Jimin stood alone on the balcony, barefoot on the cold tiles, his fingers curled around the metal railing. The wind lifted strands of his damp hair and brushed against the tear marks that still hadn't fully faded from his cheeks. Behind him, the glass door slid open. You're going to catch a cold. Jungkook's voice was low, rough from lack of sleep. Jimin didn't turn around. Maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing, he murmured. Jungkook stepped outside, the chill biting immediately at his skin. He was wearing nothing but a loose black hoodie and sweatpants, his dark hair still messy from sleep. You didn't sleep at all, did you? Jungkook asked. Silence. The city hummed faintly below them. Finally, Jimin exhaled. I tried. Jungkook walked closer until he stood beside him at the railing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Their shoulders almost touched, but not quite, like two magnets resisting the pull. The memory of last night still hung between them. The rain. The confession. The way Jimin had cried in the dark, like something inside him had finally broken. Jungkook leaned his elbows on the railing. You scared me, he said quietly. Jimin let out a small laugh that sounded too brittle to be real. That's funny, he said. I scare myself too. The wind shifted. Jimin turned his head slightly, eyes distant. They're already talking about it online. Jungkook frowned. About what? Jimin pulled his phone from his pocket and unlocked it. The screen glowed cold and bright in the grey morning. He held it out. Jungkook glanced down. Headlines. Post. Speculation spreading like wildfire. Fans had noticed something during the encore. The way Jimin disappeared early. The way Jungkook followed him off stage. A blurry photo taken from far away behind the arena showed two silhouettes standing in the rain backstage. Close. Too close. Jungkook felt his stomach drop. They think we fought, Jimin said softly. Some think I collapsed, others think worse. Worse how? Jimin locked the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Rumors are creative. Jungkook watched him carefully. You're not telling me everything. Jimin's lips curved faintly. You're learning. Jimin. The name came out sharper than intended. Jimin flinched, and that tiny reaction made something twist painfully in Jungkook's chest. "You think I don't notice?" Jungkook said, his voice rising slightly. "You disappear for hours, you smile on stage like nothing's wrong. And then you break down in the rain like... Like what?" Jimin turned to face him fully now. His eyes were tired but burning. "Like someone who's human." Jungkook clenched his jaw. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" The tension between them thickened. "You act like you have to carry everything alone," Jungkook said, "like nobody else is allowed to see it." Jimin's laugh was quiet and bitter. "Welcome to being an idol. That's not an excuse." "No," Jimin said, "it's reality." The words landed hard. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You think I don't understand pressure," he said. "I think you handle it differently." "How?" Jimin hesitated. Then he said something that made the air freeze between them. "You still believe you're allowed to break." Jungkook stared at him. "And you do." Jimin shook his head slowly. "No." The city noise grew louder as morning traffic began to move. Somewhere far below, a horn blared. But up here, the silence between them was louder. Jungkook stepped closer. "So last night," he said quietly, "when you were crying." Jimin's expression hardened slightly. "What about it?" "You said you were tired of pretending." Jimin's gaze flickered. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." Jimin looked away again. "That was just exhaustion talking." "No," Jungkook said firmly, "it was." Jimin inhaled sharply. "You don't know that." "I do." Jungkook's voice softened. "Because I feel it too sometimes." Jimin's head snapped back toward him. "What?" Jungkook looked out over the city. "There are nights when the noise doesn't stop," he said quietly, "even after the concert ends." Jimin watched him carefully now. "What noise?" Jungkook tapped his temple lightly. "The voices telling you to be perfect." Jimin swallowed. "You?" Jungkook laughed softly. "Surprised?" "A little." "Why?" Jimin hesitated. "Because you look fearless." Jungkook shook his head. "I'm just good at hiding it." For a moment, something fragile passed between them. Understanding. Shared exhaustion. But it lasted only a second. Jimin suddenly stepped back. "This conversation is dangerous." Jungkook blinked. "Dangerous?" "Yes." "Why?" Jimin crossed his arms. "Because if we start saying things like this out loud, we can't pretend anymore." Jungkook frowned. "Pretend what?" Jimin didn't answer. Instead, he asked a question of his own. "Do you know what the company said after the encore?" Jungkook stiffened. "They already called. 5 times. And..." Jimin's voice turned flat. "They want an explanation." "For what?" "For why 2 members disappeared together during the final stage." Jungkook felt a spark of anger. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Jimin's eyes were sharp now. "You know how this industry works." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "So what did you tell them?" "I told them you were worried about me." "That's the truth." "Yes," Jimin said, "but it's not the whole truth." Jungkook stared at him. "What does that mean?" Jimin stepped closer again, his voice dropping. "It means," he said quietly, "that if anyone finds out how much you care about me." His sentence trailed off. Jungkook felt the tension coil tight in his chest. "They'll what?" he asked. Jimin looked directly into his eyes now. They'll destroy us. The words hit like a thunderclap. For a long moment, Jungkook didn't move. Then he said something reckless. Let them try. Jimin's expression cracked with shock. Jungkook, I'm serious. Don't say things like that. Why not? Because you don't understand the consequences. Jungkook's voice sharpened. Then explain them. Jimin's hands trembled slightly. If people think we are more than just members. He paused. The headlines won't stop. Jungkook scoffed. They already don't. This would be different. How? Jimin's voice broke. Because they'd turn you into the villain. That made Jungkook freeze. Me? Yes. Jimin looked away again. They'd say you manipulated me, that you distracted me, that you ruined the group. Jungkook felt anger flare. That's insane. That's reality. The wind gusted harder across the balcony. Jungkook stepped closer until they were barely a foot apart. Look at me. Jimin hesitated. Jimin. Slowly, reluctantly, Jimin lifted his eyes. Jungkook's voice softened again. You really think I care more about headlines than about you? Jimin didn't answer. But the silence itself was an answer. Jungkook's chest tightened. You don't trust me. That's not it. Then what? Jimin's voice dropped to a whisper. I trust you too much. The confession hung between them like electricity. Jungkook's heartbeat quickened. What does that mean? Jimin swallowed. It means if you ever said something I couldn't ignore. He trailed off again. Jungkook leaned closer. Like what? The distance between them disappeared. Jimin's breath caught. Like telling me you don't want to pretend either. Jungkook's voice came out barely louder than the wind. I don't. Jimin's eyes widened. You can't say that. But I just did. Jimin shook his head frantically. No, Jungkook, you don't understand. Then make me understand. Their voices were low but intense now. Why are you so afraid of this? Jungkook asked. Jimin's control finally snapped. Because I know how much it would hurt when it ends. The words burst out louder than he meant. Silence slammed down afterward. Jungkook stared at him. Ends. Jimin's shoulders shook slightly. Everything ends eventually. Jungkook's expression hardened. You're already planning the ending. I'm protecting us. No, Jungkook said quietly, you're protecting yourself. Jimin flinched like he'd been slapped. That's not fair. Isn't it? Jungkook's voice was steady but intense. You'd rather push me away now than risk losing me later. Jimin's eyes filled again. You think this is easy for me? I know it's not. Then stop making it harder. Jungkook shook his head slowly. I can't. Why? Because last night changed something. Jimin whispered, what? Jungkook looked at him the same way he had in the rain. Unfiltered. Honest. Seeing you cry like that, he said softly, made me realize how much I hate watching you suffer alone. Jimin's breathing trembled. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Because. Jimin's voice cracked. Because part of me wants to believe you. Jungkook took another step forward. Then believe me. The distance between them vanished completely. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The rain began again, light at first, tapping softly against the balcony railing. Jimin closed his eyes. You're dangerous, he whispered. Jungkook smiled faintly. So are you. The rain grew heavier. Neither of them moved away. The rain thickened until the city below blurred into silver and grey, the streets dissolving beneath a curtain of water. It drummed softly against the balcony railing, against the glass doors, against the quiet tension between them. Jimin opened his eyes slowly. For a moment he just looked at Jungkook, really looked at him, the stubborn tilt of his chin, the worry hidden behind his steady gaze, the quiet defiance that had always lived inside him. There had always been something dangerous about Jungkook's honesty. Jimin had spent years pretending he didn't see it. But pretending had become impossible. "You shouldn't have followed me that night," Jimin said quietly. Jungkook didn't step back. "If I hadn't, you would have stood alone in the rain until you broke." Jimin gave a faint smile. "I did break." "Yeah," Jungkook said softly, "but you didn't stay broken." Jimin looked down at his hands resting on the railing. His fingers were pale from the cold, but he didn't move them. "You don't understand how fragile this life is," he murmured. "Everything we built it can disappear overnight." Jungkook followed his gaze toward the city. "I know." "No," Jimin said gently. "You know the stage, the music, the fans." He paused. "But there's another side to it. The part where every mistake becomes a headline, every rumor becomes a storm." Jungkook didn't argue. Because he knew Jimin wasn't wrong. The world they lived in was bright on the surface, but beneath it was a maze of expectations, contracts, and invisible rules that no one talked about. "I've watched people fall because of one moment," Jimin continued quietly, "one photograph, one sentence taken the wrong way." The rain slid down the railing between them. "So you decided it was safer to never let anyone get too close?" Jungkook asked. Jimin nodded faintly. "At first it was just survival." "And now?" Jimin hesitated. "Now it's habit." Jungkook studied him for a long moment. Then he said something that made Jimin's breath hitch. "You let me get close." Jimin's eyes flickered. "That was a mistake." "You don't believe that." "I want to." Jungkook leaned against the railing beside him. "Then why didn't you push me away years ago?" Jimin's voice softened. "Because you were different." "How?" "You never treated me like someone fragile." Jungkook laughed quietly. "You're not fragile." Jimin tilted his head slightly. "You say that after watching me cry in the rain." "Yes." Jungkook's answer came without hesitation. "Crying doesn't make someone fragile. Pretending you don't feel anything does." Jimin looked at him again. There was no judgment in Jungkook's expression, no pity, just calm certainty. It was infuriating. "And comforting." "You're stubborn," Jimin muttered. "I learned from the best." Jimin snorted softly. The sound surprised both of them. For the first time that morning, the tension loosened. The rain softened again, becoming a gentle mist. Jungkook rubbed the back of his neck. "You know," he said, "we don't have to solve everything today." Jimin raised an eyebrow. "You were the one demanding answers." "True." Jungkook shrugged. "But I realized something." "What?" He looked out across the skyline, where faint sunlight was beginning to push through the clouds. "You don't need someone to save you." Jimin blinked. "That's a strange conclusion." "Maybe," Jungkook said, "but it's the truth." He turned back to Jimin. "You're strong enough to survive this world." Jimin's lips parted slightly. "Then why were you so determined to stand here with me?" Jungkook smiled faintly. "Because being strong doesn't mean you should be alone." The words were simple, but they landed deep. Jimin felt something shift quietly inside his chest, like a door opening that he had kept locked for too long. The rain stopped. Drops slid slowly from the railing, falling into the quiet air. Down below, the city was waking up. Traffic hummed. People moved through the streets, unaware of the quiet conversation happening high above them. Jimin exhaled slowly. You know what the strangest part of all this is? Jungkook tilted his head. What? Jimin looked toward the horizon, where the clouds were finally breaking. I spent so long trying to control everything, he said softly, every emotion, every word, every rumor. He paused. But the moment I stopped pretending, the world didn't collapse. Jungkook smiled. Sometimes the things we fear the most are just shadows. Jimin glanced at him. You sound like a philosopher now. Don't get used to it. They both laughed quietly. The sound felt unfamiliar and light. After a moment, Jimin straightened and stretched his arms above his head. So, he said, his voice calmer now, what happens next? Jungkook shrugged. We go downstairs. That's your big plan. Yep. Jimin chuckled. You're unbelievable. And you're overthinking again. Jimin rolled his eyes. Then he turned toward the glass door. But before stepping inside, he stopped. Jungkook. Yes. Jimin hesitated only a second. Thank you. Jungkook blinked. For what? For not pretending you didn't see me breaking. Jungkook's expression softened. Anytime. Jimin nodded once. Then he slid the door open and walked back into the warmth of the room. Jungkook stayed on the balcony a moment longer. The sky above the city was clearing now, pale sunlight spreading across the wet rooftops. The storm had passed. Inside the room, Jimin was already making coffee, moving around the kitchen with quiet familiarity. When Jungkook stepped inside, the scent of coffee filled the air. Jimin handed him a mug without looking up. No more dramatic balcony speeches today, he said. Jungkook grinned. No promises. Jimin shook his head, but there was a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Outside, the last drops of rain disappeared. And for the first time in a long while, neither of them felt like they had to face the world alone.